You mentioned earlier that you're reading that book about children in the orphanage all dying because they didn't get any love. And actually, had last year, and it's not about death, but it was very heartbreaking experience. Like I would pick up my oldest son from school after his karate lessons, and there was always 5 minutes before he would come. There was always this girl, and I think she was like 11 or 12, something like that. She was an older girl, and she had just such a sad expression on her face, and I mean like sad, sad. Like her lips were hanging like this, and she was always like this. There was no smile. It was always the same expression. And I hope it was just because of that one lesson. But I actually saw her one time when I was walking the dogs, and she had the same expression. It just broke my heart every single time.
Mate,
And
the problem is these learned behaviours. You know, if she's like that at age 5, she'll probably be like that at age 55.
exactly. But what I was wondering is because I definitely do not want my kids to have any moment that they're like, well, they're going to have moments, but not like extended moments that they have such a face. So I'm just wondering, like, what could a father do to raise happy kids?
I think in terms of the home life, um, I like Dale Carnegie. If we go back to the 1930s, and then I'll give you an old one, then I'll give you a new one. So Dale Carnegie, 1930s, he wrote a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is a bit of a classic self-help book. But two things come out of his book, two things for me at least. The first one is to be genuinely interested in the people around you. And I mean genuinely interested. So taking that interest. So that's the 4-minute rule, really. And taking a great interest in your children. So when they come home from school, being insanely and intensely interested in what they've done. And the other one that he talks about in his book is to say nice things about people behind their back. So even when they're not, even when your children aren't there, or if you're just talking to one child, then saying nice things about the other child is a really powerful subconscious thing because it gets back to the other child. um, so they will hear about it, but it's a really smart thing. It's a lot. Once again, it's a lot cleverer than it sounds. My grandma used to say that if you haven't got anything nice to say about people, then don't say anything at all. And it turns out she's pretty right. So I would say keep your language really positive around your children. So be interested in what they're doing and say nice things behind their back. That's from the 1930s, and that still holds true as parenting today. And the more modern one is the Carol Dweck growth mindset. There's various theories around this. Essentially, positive and negative aren't equal. All right, so bad weighs more than good. So what that means is your brain is predisposed. Your brain is very good at noticing the bad things your children do. Your brain is very good at noticing the one bad driver that ruins your drive to work. Your brain is very good at noticing one angry customer which ruins your day, and it deletes all the good ones. And therefore, what that basically means is that you should be 3 times more positive than you are negative. So in your communication, not just with your children, but with your wife, with your work colleagues, so it's not 3 to 0, so you can be negative, but for every negative thing that you say, you should say 3 positives to counteract the negative. So 3 to 1, but that's the minimum. And in terms, I know you're aiming this podcast at males. Lads, if your relationship at home dips below 2 to 1, then it will probably end in divorce. There's some really strong stats there. So you've got to keep your language positive. The minimum is 3 to 1. However, in the workplace, so let's apply it to the workplace, then high performance teams operate on a ratio of 6 to 1. So if I was in a meeting with you, or if I was in your office and I could hear 6 bits of praise, 6 bits of encouragement, 6 bits of laughter for every negative, I'd be fairly sure your team is performing well. And there's some new research coming out that applies to families. And they reckon, particularly with young children, the ratio at home should be 8 to 1. So you as a dad or your wife, and that once again, it's not 8 to 0. So you can be critical, and there's sometimes when you have to be critical of your children. But if I was in your house and I could hear 8 bits of laughter, 8 bits of praise and encouragement, catching your kid doing 8 small things really well for every negative, then I would suspect that that family is bathed in love, and that's the environment that is conducive to bringing up really, really well balanced children.
Wow, that's amazing information. Thanks. Thanks for
But
sharing that.
the trick is, as a parent, is to make them authentic and real. So kids don't want bullshit. They don't want praise for no reason, and the difficulty is to catch them. So in your case with little children, 8 times drawing nice pictures, 8 times brushing their teeth without being asked. Just small little things saying, do you know what? Thank you for doing that. It's really made Dad's day. Small little things, noticing the small things becomes crucial. And I love it. I think 6-1 or 8-1 at home is very powerful. But getting them right, once again, it's not an exact science. And can I give you another one while it's in my head? It's a very little known thing, but I love it to bits. It's called the Matthew effect. I think it comes from a reading from the Bible. I'm not a religious person, but basically the Matthew effect means that, how do I explain it? A small success in something achieves a big breakthrough in learning, and the children then progress really quickly. So basically the Matthew effect is when the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. But if you apply it to parenting, let's apply it to reading. So children who go to school who are already able to read, then they take giant leaps of learning very quickly because the books get bigger and interesting and they start to enjoy reading. So those who can already read will accelerate at school hugely. Those who get to school unable to read, the Matthew effect means that they will fall behind because all their peers, they will see everybody else accelerating away. They won't be able to catch up. So reading for them will become a chore, and the whole education will suffer. And do you know what the number one thing is to get boys reading? Is the biggest influence on boys picking a book up is whether their dad reads. So even if you can't read, dads, pretend. Sometimes switch off the TV, sit with a book, and if your son sees dad reading a book, that is the biggest single factor in your son also picking up a book. That's the Matthew effect. But it applies, I'm not just talking reading. If your children are doing music, buy yourself an instrument and learn with them. If your children want to do cooking, put your apron on and cook with them. If your children want to do trampolining, bounce on the trampoline with them. The Matthew effect says it doesn't matter what it is, but some small wins and some enthusiasm from the parents mean the children will grow into that and they will take massive leaps of learning in the future. But you've got to help them. You've got to join in. Joining in is the key, which you're already doing. I know that in your case you're already doing it. I'm preaching to the rest of the dads listening to this. Dads, step up to the plate. Come on.
I'm learning so much from this. I'm loving it.
Hey man, I hope you got all the information out of this that you were looking for. If so, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you hit the bell, then every time we come out with a new video, you will be informed. For now, thanks for listening, and I hope to see you soon.